My dear brothers and sisters, I am Father Dr. Patrick Merceline D'Souza. Today I am going to reflect on St. Mark's Gospel, chapter 12, verse 31. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. This is the second part of the commandment about the foremost commandment of Jesus. That is the greatest commandment which Jesus has given us. In the Gospel passage from St. Mark, Mark 12:21 to 34, Jesus answers the question about the commandment that is foremost or greatest of all. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. And also speaks about the second commandment, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. In the first part of this video, we have tried to understand what Jesus means by his words. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. In this second part of the video, the commandment that is foremost of all, part 2, we shall reflect on the second command, that is, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There are three important components of the second command of Jesus, which are 1. You shall love. 2. You shall love your neighbor. And 3. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. You shall love. The first component of the second commandment of Jesus exhorts us to love. Jesus is very clear about what he wants from his disciples. Jesus wants his disciples to love. Love has to be the motto of the life of the disciples of Jesus. This is what Jesus wants from his disciples, and this is what he commands them to do. There is no escaping from this command of Jesus. All the disciples need to consider love as their primary goal, responsibility, and duty. Without love, no one can become a true follower of Jesus. Love is the very fabric of the life of a true disciple of Jesus. No one can say this, I love God and I want to be a disciple of Jesus, but I will not love people as a primary duty or as an essential requirement of the discipleship. Being a disciple of Jesus and loving people are two sides of the same coin. One cannot exist without the other. If you are a disciple of Jesus, then you will surely love people. And if you have no love for the people, then you cannot be the disciple of Jesus. You shall love your neighbor. Jesus wants his disciples to love their neighbor. Who is our neighbor? We need to answer this question and understand who our neighbor is, so that we can fulfill the commandment of Jesus, love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus answers the question, who is our neighbor? One teacher of the law asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? Jesus answers this question by telling him the parable of the Good Samaritan. In the parable of the Good Samaritan, a man was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest and a Levite saw this man lying on the road, but they did not stop by this man's side to help him. They just passed him by, leaving him to fend for himself. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expenses you may have incurred. After narrating this parable, Jesus asked his disciples, which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." So, through this parable, Jesus answers the question regarding who is our neighbor. For Jesus, our neighbor is anyone who is in need of us. So when we see someone who needs our help, that person becomes our neighbor. Therefore, being a neighbor of ours is not someone staying with us or someone staying in our neighborhood. Neighborhood here is not physically staying together. Here, neighborhood does not focus its attention on the place of our stay. It refers to the people who are in need. So, when I see someone in need, then he or she becomes my neighbor. Jesus wants us to love our neighbor. In other words, Jesus wants us to love all those people who need our help, our time, and our resources. This requirement of the discipleship is very demanding of the disciples because it is easy to love our spouses, our children, our parents, our family members, our friends, and sometimes even total strangers. But to love those who need us is not an easy task because loving our family members and our near and dear ones is pleasant and satisfying, and we love to do that. Besides, loving our near and dear ones does not immediately place demands on our resources, but loving a person who is in need puts us into a situation where we may have to spend our money, time, or other resources immediately. The Good Samaritan had to immediately spend some money to get the medical treatment to that traveler who was attacked by the robbers. The Good Samaritan could not postpone what he had to do for his neighbor. He immediately spent money to treat that person and later on instructed the innkeeper, saying, "Look after him, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any expenses you may have incurred." After finishing telling this parable to the disciples and others, Jesus asks the disciples, "Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." Through this parable, Jesus tells his disciples that the person who responds to the needs of the people who are in need is a neighbor. But what we want to know here is not whether I am or someone else is a neighbor or not. What we want to know instead is who is the neighbor of ours whom we need to help. By the same parable of the Good Samaritan, Jesus has answered this question also. Who is our neighbor? And the answer that Jesus has given us is this: the person who needs our help is our neighbor. Therefore, the second command of Jesus tells us to love the people who are in need of us. So when we come to know about someone else who is in need, then that person becomes our neighbor whom we need to love. That means we need to help. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. After we have identified our neighbor, we need to begin to show our love towards that person. And how does Jesus expect us to love the person or neighbor of ours who is in need? You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus has given this answer of how we need to love our neighbor. We need to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. What is the meaning of this term, loving ourselves? Loving ourselves, we have to understand this concept properly. To understand that, we need to first know the meaning of love. The meaning of love, many religious leaders, philosophers, poets, writers, thinkers, social and political leaders and others have tried to define love and to give the meaning and significance of the concept of love. In my book entitled Treasures of Human Personhood, I have put the following specifications of the meaning and significance of the concept of love. A. 1. a strong desire that the loved one must get the best from life. That means I must have a strong desire that my loved one must get the best of life. Secondly, my willingness to suffer and sacrifice so that the loved one gets the best from my life, from life. That means my love for my neighbor or my friend or whoever it is that I want the best for that person to happen, and in order that the best to happen to that person, I am willing to make sacrifice and to suffer for that person. The practical aspect of love. We need to ponder over the practical aspect of love. In other words, we need to answer the following question: how does one behave with one's beloved in order to translate into reality one's readiness to suffer and make tremendous sacrifices so that our loved one gets the best from life? As I have said earlier, love means to make sacrifices to do what is best for others. There are so many things which should be considered as the best for any person, such as caring for the other person, helping the others in their needs and difficulties, whether financial or emotional, encouraging others when they are down and out, giving hope to others when they have lost all hope and confidence, forgiving others, helping others to start all over again after they have lost all that they had achieved and earned, and so on. I have visualized the following imaginary situations and acts which reflect the act of a loving sacrifice. These are only sample examples, but there could be many like this. When one sits with another who has lost his mother or her mother and says nothing except just being with that person as long as one is needed to be there. When one volunteers to babysit the other's child, when one realizes that the other hardly gets any time to be with her husband as the child is too mischievous and demanding. When one takes the first step to restore the broken relationship and speaks nothing of the insults and bad words she or he was subjected to in the past. When one refrains from buying ice cream in the company of the other, when one knows that the other has a diabetes and he cannot control his or her craving for ice cream, so I also will not eat ice cream for the sake of him. When one decides to donate one's kidney to the other, when one comes to know that both the kidneys of the other have failed and there is not an iota of a chance for his or her survival without a kidney transplant. The last one is the ultimate sacrifice that one can ever think of making for the other. To die for the other is the greatest sacrifice love can ask for. Jesus has said, "Greater love has no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." My dear brothers and sisters, thank you very much for watching this video and listening to the reflection carefully, lovingly and patiently. Please forward this reflection and this video to all your contacts. If you want to talk to me or suggest something about my reflection, please call me on my WhatsApp number 7030447934 and give your suggestions. I have a YouTube channel, Father Dr. Patrick D'Souza. Please visit my channel and subscribe to my channel and ask others also to subscribe to it. And now I pray for you. Heavenly Father, bless these people who are watching this video, listening to the reflection and forwarding it to others. Lord, bless them, keep them happy, holy and healthy. May all their dreams, aspirations be fulfilled according to your holy wish. This prayer I make in the great faith to you, O Lord.